Hey everybody, welcome back to the JPU show. If you're new, welcome to the show. My name is Botter. Do me a favor before we proceed. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on future videos. And if you're listening to the audio version, hopefully you're already subscribed so you don't miss out on future episodes. If you're no stranger to the show and you're just back for another episode, welcome back. Glad to have you. I'm Botter and I've got the big brain Blythe Brumleaf here with me. Do you want me to retire Big Brain?
All right. I don't know that I like it. I'm not 100% on it. Right. But you say it all the time, so I just entertain the tap dance.
I'm queuing up. I'm setting up our next JPU merch drop, which will just be Big Brain Blythe Brumleaf, and it'll be you in a cartoon form.
I want all the
big
proceeds.
Old brain. All right. Well, you know what? I think at least let me call you Big Brain Blythe Brumleaf on this segment, because this is 110% your segment. This whole episode might as well just be the Blythe Brumleaf show, because today's topic, we are talking about how to promote your podcast to LinkedIn. And your boy has 0% on that, because I can't tell you the last time I logged into my LinkedIn. I think it was probably 2015. I created one because I had attended like a workshop and I was trying to get into like corporate America. I just got my PMP and I attended like a workshop at FSCJ or one of these community colleges, and they were like, yeah, LinkedIn is the new way to go, like create one. And I made one, and then I immediately got a job without it. It was like completely unrelated, and I was like, all right, well, cool, I don't got to touch that ever again. But I know I'm missing out on plenty of opportunities. I know that you are a LinkedIn wizard, so I
hate even
bow
saying
to you.
That. You don't need to do that.
I bow to you, and I pass it to you. Life, how can people promote their podcast to LinkedIn? What are some strategies? What's the best practices so they don't look foolish out here?
Well, the reason I wanted to talk about this is because I think it is still, LinkedIn has had a tremendous amount of growth. I know it is often seen as the cringier platform when it comes to social media. But in my opinion, the amount, I guess the low barrier of entry with LinkedIn makes it powerful, in my opinion, because the content tends to be a little bit more on the fluffy side of things, the aspirational side of things, but also a little cringy at times, a lot cringy at times. But just because that level is the bar is very low, so you can take advantage of it as a podcaster with using some of your content. Now, I will say that this isn't applicable to all podcasts. I don't know that your podcast would work, frankly, on LinkedIn. I don't think many sports or entertainment podcasts, pop culture podcasts would work on LinkedIn. It is a business focused platform. It is a business first platform. But it is still quite valuable. Out of all the social media channels that I publish to all of them, LinkedIn is the one that I get by far the most engagement. It is by far the number one source of listens to my show. I have a business focused podcast. My audience are, logistics and supply chain people. They're all on LinkedIn. That is their social media platform of choice. And so I think, as podcasters, it is, or just creators in general, it's important to know where your audience is hanging out so you can give them that content. There are other channels, of course, that, we don't have time to go into all of them. But I will say that LinkedIn is infinitely more valuable than a platform like Instagram. The conversion rate on Instagram is so insanely low of people who are going to maybe click on a link or see that you have a clip that's posted from your show and then, go and listen to it from Instagram. It's like less than 0.1% of people will leave that platform to take that kind of action. Now, they're more evolving into a shopping platform, which is very similar to TikTok, very similar to Facebook, Twitter, just for the or X, sort of for the sociology. I do think that podcasts do a little bit better on Twitter. I've been posting that platform for far too long, but that is my second most popular social media account, but by far LinkedIn is the number one platform. Now, you might just think that you can just post text updates or image updates, very similar to Facebook. But videos also do really well. The one thing I have noticed with LinkedIn is that your caption, that your post describing the video or the image is very, very important, especially if you are posting video. We post probably 2 to 3 video clips per day, but the ones that come from the podcast, 2 to 3 video clips that come from the podcast per day to LinkedIn. And we're posting it to my personal page. We're also posting it to the company pages. Very similar to Facebook, your personal page has a lot more reach than your business page. And so we kind of double dip and we kind of try out both of them. But it's overwhelmingly the number one social media platform for my podcast. I don't, that's, I think that that's probably the extent of it as far as like advice and tips for posting to LinkedIn. I think it's more around the idea of connecting with your audience there, especially when you haven't maybe been active in a little while, so sort of trying to cultivate what your algorithm looks like, what your feed looks like. A lot of times, if you get started on, a channel like LinkedIn, because so many people are in the same boat as you, where they just don't log in hardly ever, or if they do log in, they just see a bunch of cringy stuff and they're like, I just want to get out of here. So I will say that there is a little bit of fine tuning that you have to do to make sure that you're connected with the right people, you're following the right pages, and then that cringe level goes down dramatically because you're seeing insights from some of the smartest people in the world, especially people who run businesses, tech companies, people who are thinking about big problems, whether it's space logistics or maritime or B2B SaaS. There's all different kinds of categories, and especially categories of content that are doing very well on LinkedIn. You just have to play up with what kind of style you're posting. I will say images do the best. Keeping it short and sweet is the best. Outside of that, I think what's holding you back from posting more to LinkedIn, knowing that these other channels, your reach just isn't there. But why wouldn't you?
I think to your earlier point that I don't. I guess it's hard to say I don't. The creatives and people I want to interview aren't there because I don't know if they're there. A majority of the artists that I search for or writers that I look for, when I look up like where their social medias are at, guaranteed Instagram and usually Twitter and sometimes YouTube if they do sketching online. Like I don't know too many creators that are, or at least for my particular podcast, pop culture and comics, that are actively marketing themselves on LinkedIn or even talk about LinkedIn.
But what about your
So
sponsors?
do you think Ben is? I mean, look, all due respect to Ben, like I have a direct relationship to Ben. As far as the sponsors, now that is a very good. I think that is a good rebuttal where I could maybe be. I could be engaging the folks behind the scenes, the decision makers, the managers. They're probably on LinkedIn. You're right.
All of my podcast sponsors have come from LinkedIn, all of them. And
You're making a compelling case.
they love to be, to me, it's more about
But
the vibe of the platform.
I guess I just don't.
Instagram,
I guess I just don't know. I mean, like I would be sharing, I guess, like comic book content on LinkedIn. I guess has always been kind of weird to me because I guess like the my view of LinkedIn is more about business and like work updates. At least maybe I still have like the 2018 lens where it's like, oh yeah, you go to LinkedIn to post that, hey, I got a job here, or hey, I'm looking for a job here, or I apply for jobs.
it's
I guess
much
I
more
just
than that now. It's definitely much more than that. I would say ever since 2020, it is really picked up as far as like an actual like social media platform, where there's lots of really good discussions that do happen now. It Again, you will have to filter through some of the noise, but you have to do that on really any social media feed, where you unfollow the people that are annoying and you follow the people that are interesting. I just think when you're on LinkedIn, it's much more of a business focus.
Mhm.
And if you're trying to get business, I think that's a perfect way to get in front of those potential sponsors, is by sharing the kind of content that you create. And I think you could probably shift the messaging a little bit. Like you're not going to say the same thing on Twitter that you would on LinkedIn. Like it's just two different audiences, two different languages. You would position people who do really well on LinkedIn don't really do so hot on other social media channels. So it is an interesting dynamic to watch. But if I get business from there, if I get leads from there, if I get sponsors from there, then I'm going to keep posting. And I think that there is a way that you could take your podcast from a sports and entertainment angle and stand out from connect with, the potential sponsors that you would want to connect with, search for their company, search for, the PR contact, or the marketing manager or the sales development person that's at that company. You could find them all right on LinkedIn. And when you click on, and I would say the beauty and the horror behind LinkedIn is also that you can see who's viewing your profile. So if you see that certain positions, certain companies are viewing your profile, it makes that cold outreach to get a sponsor or to pitch them or to introduce yourselves to them. It makes that cold lead a little bit more warm.
All right. Well, you said something that did intrigue me. That I mean, you're giving some great motivators to maybe dust off the old. I don't even want to. I don't even want to think about it. But you said something about conversion. Now, how are you posting your episode? You just posting a link to the episode on your website or Buzzsprout player, and how are you? Where are you getting the stats? Like, how do you know that people are actually clicking your link and playing it? Like, does LinkedIn give you that info?
So I always publish a website link because I auto import the podcast to my website. So we were always using a website link so I can get that data. I can get that tracking. Also, Buzzsprout will tell you where your plays are coming from as well.
That's right.
So it'll show you in the top networks of where, whether it's app, browser versus app versus Spotify versus Apple. It'll tell you also the social channels as well. So we do it in a couple different ways. We have a process called initial episode promo or new episode promo, which is we take a quote from the episode. We use that as the intro. And then we say this quote came from, and then we follow it by this quote came from this episode. And then we give a short summary of the episode. And then we put a link to it, the website link. Now on the website link, when you follow that link, which is very similar to the JPU directory, we follow this same format, but if you click on an episode from there, you'll see, follow the show on Apple, follow the show on Spotify. So it will list out that specific information. So if they have a platform of choice, it just makes that click much easier for them. So say if they don't want to listen in the web browser, then they can just click on Apple or Spotify and just listen to it that way. We also include a link to YouTube that is in the show notes as well. I have seen where other podcasters will take the link and just instead they'll use, I would say maybe just like a here's a general overview text-based post, and then they will put a link to the actual episode or all three platforms, which is Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. They will put a link to all three of those channels as the first comment in the LinkedIn post. So those are a couple different ways because you're trying to get around the algorithm of, these big channel like LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, they hate sending traffic away from their platform. So if you include a link in your post, in the original post, then it will devalue it in the algorithm. So kind of a little hacky way to get around it. I'm surprised LinkedIn hasn't fixed this yet because other platforms have, but you can put a link in the comments of where you can listen to the episode. So we've done both of those methods, and I'll go back to my earlier point that it really just depends on what the caption of your post is saying, because there are a couple different things that matter to LinkedIn whenever you are publishing your post. It matters who you tag. It matters the companies you tag. Hashtags don't really make a difference one way or another. Please stop using them in your post because no one is using them on LinkedIn, and no one is definitely using them properly. That's probably my biggest pet peeve. And then another indicator for the algorithm's sake is LinkedIn is different than I think most other social media platforms, where they will show a little small snippet of text and then they'll have a little option to read more. So if you go a little bit longer in your post, which I think you can type up to like 1,500 characters, like it's something ridiculous. Like you can write a whole blog post and a LinkedIn post if you want to. I wouldn't recommend that. But someone clicking on the see more or read more is a signal to LinkedIn's algorithm that that post is useful to the audience. So they will show it to more people. So that's a little bit of a hint, like, okay, so who are you tagging in the post? The companies you're tagging in the post, are people clicking on see more or read more so that the full post appears? And then also what's going on in the comments themselves. Are people commenting on your post? And added bonus, if you within the first like hour, if you are responding to people who are commenting, then that is a signal boost also to the LinkedIn algorithm that, hey, people are actually, they're liking this post and they're also commenting and engaging, which means people are staying on their platform. So they will show that post to more people. Now, there are other features very similar to Twitter where you can repost that same post. I feel like I'm saying that a lot, but you can either repost it or you can repost it with a quote of your own. So what I'll do a lot of times is that if we have a text-based post with a link in it that does pretty well, it gets some good comments, I'll go back in a few days later and I will repost it. Sometimes it's just a simple repost where it's just a click of a button. But other times I'll add in just a little bit of text that will make somebody, click on that link as well. And the value, I will say the ultimate value of LinkedIn is the shelf life of your post. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, famously low. I'm talking less than 2 minutes. From the time that you post it to the time that the algorithm decides either it's going to be dead or alive as a post is concerned, that is what is on all other channels except for LinkedIn. I would probably argue YouTube as well, but it's a separate argument on if they're actually a social network or not. But LinkedIn, if your post does even reasonably well, it has a shelf life of up to a week. There are posts that will still stay at the top of people's feeds for up to a week, depending on what your audience is engaging with and what their audience is engaging with. And then additionally, not to keep pumping up, LinkedIn's tires here, but additionally, even people that you are not connected with. So on LinkedIn, you have, sort of your first tier connections, your second tier connections, which means your second tier is you're connected with a lot of the same similar people. So you have a lot of mutuals. Third tier is same as second tier, just a little bit less than second tier. So even like those second and third tier people can see that post up to a week later. And so it's the longevity, it's the audience that's there, and it's also the low barrier of entry, because if there's a lot of people posting cringe and there's still a lot of people that are on that platform, they have I think they're top 3 or top 4 as far as social media channels are concerned. If they still have that audience is craving good content. So why can't you be the one that gives it to them?
Well said. You've made some compelling cases for me to
Can't
dust
believe
off.
I just spent all this time defending this cringy platform, but it sends me great business.
Hey,
There
look,
are lots of good discussions that go on there too.
Look, listeners, if you are not cringy, look, LinkedIn is ripe for the taking. All right, the bar, according to Blythe, is set awfully low. No, all right, maybe
Some of
not
you
awfully
are,
low.
and it's okay. Maybe embrace the cringe. I mean, the
Yeah,
algorithm clearly rewards it on LinkedIn, so
for
do
sure.
what you
So
got to
look,
do.
I think if you are a podcaster that focuses on business, finance, things that would thrive in LinkedIn, it obviously is a very useful platform and rewarding platform in that regard. And I think even for myself speaking, I think from that angle, if you're looking for sponsors, like you're thinking about people that have decision makers, people that control budgets for companies, and where are they probably at on LinkedIn. So look, big brain Blythe Rumley strikes again. All right. Fantastic topic. Thank you so much. And once again, as I always like to do, we're going to turn the tables and invite you into the conversation. If you're listening, if you've got your own experiences with LinkedIn or found success, or however you want to share about promoting and marketing your podcast or using your podcast on LinkedIn, we would love to hear it. Either leave a comment at the bottom of this video on YouTube or write us in. I don't know where you'd write us in. Wait, no, it'd be Jack's podcast.
Buzzsprout comments, right?
Oh my God, of course. Yes, that's right. Buzzsprout now offers a fan mail. So in the show notes of this episode, there should be a link to send in to text, directly text. You don't got to go on email. You're going to write an email. You don't got to open up your desktop or a web browser. You can directly text us your thoughts about this episode if you're listening to the podcast version. If you're on YouTube, leave us a comment. Let us know what you thought about this. And if you got anything else to add to this topic about how to promote your podcast on LinkedIn. With that said, thank you guys so much for hanging out. Subscribe if you haven't. Stay tuned for more episodes. We're building up the library. All right. So there's definitely a video on topic for you. We'll catch you around. Thanks for tuning in. Peace.